Violet.
Jersey. Jersey is an ex-kindergarten teacher and a former nun who just escaped from the convent and is tired of being the only virgin in New York City. Would anyone like to buy her a drink?
A Jersey girl heads to New York City with dreams of becoming a successful songwriter, but ends up slinging drinks with other scantily clad bartenders. This week, we chat about Art Garfunkel, why people in New York City don't need their parking validated, and the world's biggest fan of that band The Calling. Remember them? You can't fight the moonlight as we find out if Coyote Ugly stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Test of Time. I'm James Brief, and joining me as always is my co-host Alan Noah. How are you, Al?
I'm fine, but it's not like I'm your co-host or you're my co-host. We are equals. We are both Paul Simon. Like, there is no Art Garfunkel here. Although, to be fair, Art Garfunkel was a pretty talented guy.
Yeah, he was. And, totally random you bring this up. My mom just told me this totally random story about Art Garfunkel. My mom came to the States in the early 50s and grew up in an immigrant area in Buffalo, New York. And she grew up with this guy named Sandy Greenberg. The last thing she heard about him was that he was having some eye problems, and that's really all she heard. You kind of lose touch. There's no Facebook back then. The story that you just found out is it turns out that Sandy Greenberg went off to Columbia University in the early 60s, but then sophomore year, he wound up actually going blind, and it was glaucoma, and he was totally depressed, and it was difficult for him to get through life, and he only got through it because his college roommate wound up supporting him and reading every book to him and helping him through his classes, helping him write his papers. And it turns out that this friend is Art Garfunkel, the Art Garfunkel. So, the guy kind of is sometimes a punchline, but it's a remarkable story. And Sandy Sanford Greenberg wound up writing this book. And can you guess what the name of this book is, about his friend Art Garfunkel?
Bridge Over Troubled Water?
No. It's the first line in Sound of Silence.
Oh, hello, darkness, my old friend. Because he's blind. I get it. Very clever. Very clever. Well, Art Garfunkel was an aspiring singer-songwriter, not unlike Violet Sanford, the main character in Coyote Ugly.
And the guy's name of that book, Sandy Greenberg, is Sanford Greenberg. So there's a total Art Garfunkel connection here.
I mean, how about that? Today we're going to talk about Coyote Ugly. It's celebrating its 20th anniversary. You said you saw this movie before?
Yeah, I saw this about 20 years ago. I saw it, I'm pretty sure, in the theater or maybe shortly after. Have you ever seen this film?
I did see it. I'm pretty sure I saw it exactly once when it came out in the theater. I actually saw this movie on a date. Maybe not the best choice to take a girl on a first date. It was our first and only date. We didn't go out again, not because of this movie, but I think we both enjoyed it. But I'm pretty sure I haven't seen this movie since that date in August of 2000. So if you haven't seen the movie in 20 years, like James and I, it's about Violet Sanford, a young woman from New Jersey who heads to New York City to pursue her dream of becoming a songwriter. Once in the Big Apple, Violet finds that the path to stardom is more difficult than she hoped, especially because she is afraid to perform her own songs in public. To make ends meet, she becomes a bartender at Coyote Ugly, a bar where scantily clad women serve drinks, dance on the bar, and provide a rowdy atmosphere. Violet also meets a charming cook named Kevin, and they begin to date. Kevin encourages Violet to conquer her stage fright, but after he pushes her too hard, they break up. Violet also loses her job at Coyote Ugly, and she's just about ready to give up and move home when her father inspires her to pursue her dream. In the end, Violet gets back together with Kevin, conquers her fear, and scores a record deal. Okay, so I know that I bought 2 tickets for this movie in the theater. You maybe did or didn't. How did it do at the box office?
Well, this film, it actually had a higher budget than I imagined. It had a $45 million budget. And
Really?
Yeah. And it opened on August 4th, 2000. It opened at number 4 that weekend with a very decent $17 million. But it lost to 2 other openings that weekend. Kind of forgotten film by the director Paul Verhoeven, of RoboCop and Total Recall fame. He had this movie called Hollow Man, which was about, I think, Kevin Bacon turns invisible.
Yes, and Elizabeth Shue is in that, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And number 3, you had the Clint Eastwood with a bunch of guys going back to the moon or back to space. They're called Space Cowboys.
That one does not ring any bells.
That's one we might review because it's got a really good cast. It's like Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, James Garner, and Donald Sutherland. But this film, Coyote Ugly, it actually had some decent legs. It opened with $17 million and wound up with $60 million domestically and $113 million worldwide. It wasn't a hugely profitable film, but it made some money.
Well, that's good, I guess. I mean, good for Coyote Ugly and all of the people who worked so hard on that movie. And the movie starts with Violet. She's working at a pizza joint in New Jersey, and she's off to the big city. And it's a little bit odd how they make it like this big deal that a girl from New Jersey is going into New York City. I mean, you live in New York City. Aren't there like tons of people from New Jersey everywhere?
Yeah, it's kind of odd that they make this character Violet seem to be a small town girl when she's from New Jersey. And she's from like the Jersey Shore area. The thing about it is they needed someone to be not from New York City, but because of a plot point later in the film, they needed her to be within driving distance of the city. So they kind of got her as far away as possible. But it is a little weird that they give it this whole fish out of water thing. If you notice, one thing striking at you when they show the skyline is the Twin Towers. And this film comes out in the summer of 2000. So, it's about 13 months before September 11th, 2001. And this still kind of has the vibe of you're moving to Manhattan and she's moving to, of course, some like 3rd floor, like shithole, sort of like almost like the building that Akeem moves into and Coming to America. It's the kind of place that gets broken into, and when you move in, there's cockroaches everywhere and it's dirty. And there's a great line that when they're getting to New York and they're talking about how gross it is, someone does say, the touching things in New York City, that's going to start a plague someday.
Yeah, that definitely jumped out at me. It's her dad who says that. And the dad is like, 4 people were killed in New York City last night. Oh, I'm reading about it in the paper. New York City's scary. But then, when he says the line about the subway is going to start a plague, even though this movie came out 20 years before the COVID pandemic, still too soon. Just too soon.
We have to actually mention it's not just any dad. This is John Goodman. I did not associate John Goodman with this film, so he's a pleasant surprise in any film John Goodman pops into.
Yeah. There's one throwaway line as she's talking about moving into the city where she says, "Don't worry, I set the VCR timer for you," which even in 2000, I feel like at that point, VCRs were kind of on their way out, but it's easy to imagine that a dad in 2000 had a VCR.
I disagree. What would you record something with in 2000? TiVo is still a couple years away. I don't think there's anything that you could record your shows.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, but Violet, she has left New Jersey and all of her Jersey friends, and she's gonna make it in the big city. And she wants to get a music career, but it's a little different than your typical, like, I'm an aspiring singer-songwriter, because she's actually just an aspiring songwriter. Like specifically, I don't want to perform my songs. And we eventually learned that this is because her mother, who is also an aspiring singer-songwriter, she was terrified of the stage as well. So just like her mom, she just wants to write songs. There's a lot of people that are like that. You got your Max Martin guys, that write like 50 songs, 50 number one songs, but never sing a song themselves.
Right. And she's recording her music at home. She can't do it in her apartment because the walls are thin and the neighbor starts banging on the wall. So she goes up onto the roof and she records her demo with a cassette tape. They were a thing in 2000. And she goes around the city trying to get people to listen to her demo, and it doesn't really go very well. There's a great cameo from Ellen Cleghorn from Saturday Night Live. But then she goes to an open mic and she chickens out, but she goes to a bar and sees about if she can perform there. And she's talking to the bartender who looked familiar. Did he look familiar to you? Did you recognize him?
No, I didn't.
It's a very small role, but it's O-Face guy from Office Space.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Ow, ow.
Exactly.
Did you recognize the band that was playing in the background of that bar?
I did recognize them. That is The Calling with their one-hit wonder song, Wherever You Will Go.
Yeah, how does it go again, Al?
If I could, then I would. I'll go wherever you will go.
When up high,
when down low. Random aside about that band, when I was a page at NBC, The Calling played at Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and I was working the show that night, and there was one girl in the audience who was the biggest fan of The Calling ever. Like, I don't even think that's a hyperbolic statement because, how many huge Calling fans were there? But she was like out of her seat, like pumping her fist in the air, like, yeah, this is my band. This is my song. It's like, she hit the jackpot, she just happened to be there that night, but, it's a catchy song.
Yeah, and at this bar, she's going up to the bartender and she's like, oh, I'm an aspiring songwriter. And then the bartender, without missing a beat, he goes, oh, you see that gentleman over there? That's the guy who's in charge of finding new talent. I can only describe him as he's a safe boy that has these teen beat looks. She follows him out of the bar with all the people from the bar. And she's like, Sir, Mr. O'Donnell, I'd like to give you my demo. And she introduces herself and gives the whole bio. And then it's all a ruse. The bartender was just playing a joke. He's some busboy, or he's like a line cook at the club. But he plays along. But then she's like, the fuck, man? Like, why'd you play me like this?
Right. She's embarrassed when she finds out that he is not who he claimed to be, or who the bartender claimed he was, but who he was still going along with the lie. And she has every right to be embarrassed, and she storms away. And then he follows her home. And there's a line where he says that, like, he can take a hint after 30 minutes. And that is powerfully creepy that he's following her home for 30 minutes. And they kind of make it into a joke where she's like, I'm not used to having someone stare at my ass for 30 minutes. And then he says, oh, I was only staring at your ass for the last 15 minutes. Ha ha ha. It definitely feels creepy.
Well, to be fair, that line he says after they have established like they're going to have like another date. So that's not as weird to me. But what's incredibly weird about that conversation was when he's following her home, she's like, stop following me. And at one point she turns around and she goes, look, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to assume that you understand what that means and like get the hell away from me. And then he says the line about like, I'll figure it out after another half hour, something stupid like that. At the time, he's not meant to be creepy. The writers mean for this to be incredibly charming, but this is definitely with a lens of like, oh man, like this is not charming.
No. It certainly isn't. Although, to be fair, Violet is not the kind of person who would call the cops on this creepy guy because, one, she doesn't, Also, her apartment then gets robbed and she doesn't call the cops, which is weird. I mean, you don't need like a scene of her at the police station, but you would think just like a line of like, oh, the cops said they're never going to find my stuff or my money. That would have just made sense. But she's down on her luck. She goes to a diner, and that's where she sees these coyotes, these women who are bartenders. I mean, it's after their shift. They're just hanging out. They're making stupid bets about the centerfold in that month's Playboy. And they are throwing all of this cash around, which also to me is like really stupid. I mean, I remember the first couple of times I went into New York City by myself without my parents. My mom said, don't count your money in public. And this is in the old days when people paid for things with cash, but like, you wouldn't flash that much cash around in a diner at 3:30 in the morning, whatever time it is. That's just a bad idea.
You know, it's funny you say that because there's a couple things in this screenplay, in this film, that it tells me that the screenwriter did not live in New York City. And this is an LA screenplay because I've been to LA at like 3 in the morning when you go to the diner. And yes, this is kind of the way people act there. Another line when Violet is just going through the motions of, you know, getting rejected from record studio after record studio, not just rejected, like, but they won't even let her in the office. One lady goes, and look, lady, not only are we not taking your demo tape, but you're not getting validated either for your parking. For people that don't live in New York City, nobody drives. And even if you're super rich and you have nice cars and stuff, you don't drive around Manhattan, really. It's just something that an aspiring singer-songwriter is definitely not driving to the big Arista building in Midtown or something. Like, it's just a small thing that it's like, yeah, no New Yorker wrote this screenplay.
I 100% agree with you, and I had the exact same thought. You could interpret it, though, that when they say you're not getting validated, they mean like your art of songwriting isn't going to be validated, because they don't specifically say parking. The line is just you're getting validated. That's a stretch. I know that that's a stretch. I'm just saying, like, if you really, really wanted to, if the screenwriter wanted to defend herself. I did read that this movie has one credited screenwriter, but it was script doctored by many people, including Kevin Smith. Yeah. But getting back to the diner where these girls are flashing all their money around, it's these 3 bartenders, and one of them has a tattoo that says Al forever, and she's talking about how she loves Al. And I actually thought that there was going to be a joke later that Al was short for Alice and it was a girlfriend. It's not. I mean, at one point that character says that she's not a lesbian and she dabbled in the minors but never went pro, like meaning she experimented with other girls, and it's just kind of a throwaway line that doesn't mean anything. But I appreciated the fact that this beautiful woman had a boyfriend named Al. I like that. But basically Violet asks the guy who works at the diner, who are these girls? Where do they work? She thinks they're prostitutes because they're throwing their cash around, but he says no, they work at a bar called Coyote Ugly. And Violet goes to this bar. She meets the owner, a woman named Lil, and Lil is actually based on a real person. This movie was inspired by an article written in GQ about the Coyote Ugly Saloon, which is a real place, and the owner of the bar is, or at least was then, I'm not sure if she still owns it, but is this woman Liliana Lovell. And this character is inspired by the real Lil, the real owner of Coyote Ugly.
Yeah, we meet this character, Lil, played by Maria Bello, and she basically offers Violet an audition. She calls it an audition, not an interview. And she says, come tonight. And Violet has no idea what this bar is about. So she shows up at this bar, and it is kind of like a biker bar vibe. Like, you got a lot of bikes outside. The security is like these huge, huge guys. And inside is one of these real, like, they only serve beer and shots of dark alcohol. the thing about it, the shtick, the gimmick about it, is that the bartenders are all beautiful women. They interact with the customers in that they dance on the bar for them. They'll grab the men and like slap them on the butt. Not the other way around. The men can't grab the women, but
of course,
it's got that kind of vibe to it, and it's not something that Violet was really expecting.
Right. And Lil rips her shirt in like the perfect way to just like rip the sleeves off and to expose her belly in like 3 really quick motions where it's like, I don't think an actual t-shirt would rip that easily, but it's a movie, whatever. And she names Violet Jersey because, again, someone being from New Jersey and being in New York City is very, very weird. And Violet is completely overwhelmed. She doesn't know the rules. One of the other bartenders is this girl, Rachel. Rachel is not being nice to Violet at all. She's like trying to mess her up and get in her head. Cammie, who's the beautiful blonde whose boyfriend is Al, she's being nice and trying to help Violet, but it's not going well. Violet's basically done. She's leaving for the night because she failed her audition. But then as these 2 guys start to fight in the bar, like while she's walking out, she gets in between them and tells them to stop fighting because here's $10 and use it to buy a drink. This seems weird.
This is after she's been fired, basically. So it's not like she has any loyalty to this bar either. And it's also, I've seen men become hotheads in bars. They're usually hotheads for some stupid reason. But it's not the kind of reason that's going to be like, an Alexander Hamilton. Well, say no more. A $10 bill between the 2 of us. Well, thank you, princess. It's an odd thing. As a guy, I just didn't really relate to that is the way to diffuse a situation.
And it only gets weirder from there. Another time at the bar when there's a big, huge fight. It's almost like a brawl in this bar. And Violet diffuses that situation by singing. She grabs the microphone and sings One Way or Another by Blondie. And that fixes everything. Like all these people stop punching each other. They stop trying to steal booze. It's cool that Violet can stop bar fights. And I get that makes her a valuable asset to work at a bar. But how is she doing this again? I don't get it.
This is actually a perfect situation for this character. This is a character who's shy about going on stage. It's a character who's already been a little bit shy about dancing like the Coyotes. This is a perfect opportunity for her to save the day in her own way. But I don't see why what she does gets anyone's attention.
Right.
She didn't have to be as sexual as the Tyra Banks character or anything like that. But she could have done a great dance move. She could have done anything. She didn't have to pour water on herself. She could have poured pitchers of water on the guys that are fighting and they would have laughed. And there's a million things she could have done. But just singing the song, and I want to say kind of poorly, like it's not a fun karaoke version of it. It didn't work as the saving moment, but she does save the day. But meanwhile, now that she's getting a little more confidence, there's some guy that orders a water, and she's mimicking the kind of tough guy attitude that Lil was doing before. And she's like, "Hey, everyone, do we allow water to be served here?" And everyone screams, "No!" And she does the same thing that happens last time, and she sprays that patron with the what do you call those bar hoses? That thing with like 10 buttons on it.
Yeah, I don't know what you call it. That's a very good question.
Yeah, it's got a name, but
I'm sure.
She sprays the guy, and it turns out that's the fire marshal. Oops. But luckily, Lil seems to be on a first-name basis with this guy, and he seems to like her too, because he's like, "Lil, outside, let's talk." "All right, Jack, calm down. I'm sorry about that. She's new here." But she's able to calm the situation with only a $250 fine, because this place is quite a fire violation.
Oh,
because
yes.
it is packed wall to wall people. It really looked like if there was a fire, there would be several people, not necessarily killed by the smoke, but trampled to death.
Yes, absolutely. It is definitely a fire hazard. And then Kevin shows up at the bar and Violet is in trouble. She has to come up with $250 or she's going to be fired. And her solution is to auction off Kevin for a date. Now, I never understand this "we're going to auction off a person for a date" thing. It comes up in TV shows and movies. It's a weird trope. I've never gotten it because it's like, what are you paying for? Is the implication that you're paying for sex? Even if it's not, that's who you want to date? Someone who has to pay money? I don't know. But especially in this bar, you gotta figure that with these gorgeous women bartenders and the fact that they dance on the bar and they throw water on themselves, this is gonna be catering to a more male clientele. You would think. But apparently there's tons of single women at this bar who are willing to throw a lot of money at this hunky Australian guy. I thought that was weird.
There's real bars like Coyote Ugly and other bars that are based on this. And I've been to these bars before. You would think that, but there were always a lot of women at these bars.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think you and I went to one bar that was kind of like this once a million years ago. Red Rock?
Red Rock West, which is really what I think that this movie, I know it's based on that GQ bar, but the outside of it, everything about this film, the interior and everything looks like it was based on Red Rock West. It looks like it's on 17th and 10th, which is where Red Rock was, not West Village where Coyote Ugly is. Coyote Ugly is in the middle of a street. This one was like under an overpass.
Oh, I thought that Red Rock was kind of like a ripoff of Coyote Ugly.
I think they were contemporaries.
Oh, okay. So now Violet and Kevin are flirting and they go on a date. She goes for a ride in his car, which again, like you said, people who live in Manhattan don't have cars, especially guys who work as line cooks don't have beautiful, amazing convertibles like this guy has. Like, where the fuck did he get the money for this car?
Yeah, there's some weird things about this character and things that can be fixed by one line. This guy has a lot of rich person things. And they even have a line about he has no family or anything, but this guy has a really nice car that he drives around everywhere. It's a convertible. And as we find out on their date, he winds up buying a very, very rare comic book, which is the first appearance of the Punisher. And I've been to Comic Cons. Like, he says it's worth $1,000. This comic, it looked like it was in good condition. It's worth a lot more than $1,000. And it's just weird. Like, this guy acts like he's poor, but he also, like, at one point, Piper, when she says she needs $250, he's like, I can contribute $9. Like, that's all the money this guy has. They could have said, like, I have money, but, like, I gave it up. Like, I don't want my family's money. But it's weird that this character is both poor and has money for $1,000 comics.
Right. And he has like 5 different jobs. He works at like the fish market and he works at all these places. I mean, maybe that's how he has all this money. He just works all the time and never sleeps. And he only spends money on his comic books and his car and his pretty nice loft. Yeah. I mean, you're going to run out of money really quick in Manhattan, even if you have 5 jobs.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, not written by someone who lived in New York City. It's just, there's a couple things here that are off, because this could be an LA guy. And also, this guy is not a comic book investor. He wants to own this comic book. So, it's very important to him.
Right. And the comic comes up again later on because Violet is scared of performing her own songs, and Kevin is trying to help her overcome this fright. But he's also kind of like pushing her a bit. And there's a line that he seems to be coming close to, and then he has to back off, and he keeps kind of going back and forth with her. At one point, she's talking about the fact that stage fright runs in her family. And he says, oh yeah, stage fright DNA. I saw that on ER, which is a dated reference. Actually, Maria Bello, who plays Lil in this movie, she was on ER for a couple seasons.
ER was one of those shows that was on for 10 years. So it was one of those Law and Order kind of things. Like if you became a big actor in the early 2000s, you probably had a role as, on Law and Order, ER, one of those kind of things. A procedural.
Right. But then, so Kevin, in his quest to help Violet, he sets her up at this open mic night, and Violet doesn't show because she's at work and she can't leave early. She says she can't leave early. She could. Lil isn't like forcing her to stay, but Violet kind of doesn't seem to want to go because she is still afraid. And because she doesn't show up for this gig, Kevin has to give the friend that he called in this favor for the comic book. Like that was his payment. It wasn't really a favor. He owed this guy this incredibly rare comic book. Would you do that for a girl, James? Would you give one of your rare comic books for something like that?
Well, I mean, it seems like he put this thing down as some kind of collateral, but it seems like he paid $1,000 for her to get this gig, which seems kind of weird because he also like surprised her with it. It was just a kind of weird thing. Like it wasn't like she got this enormous opportunity to be on Letterman or something. It just seemed like that's a little aggressive. I mean, it was sweet of him, but, it doesn't work out well. And he loses his comic book. Right.
And I guess that's like a recurring theme with this character. He does things that are quote unquote nice and romantic, but also, very aggressive, like following her home for 30 minutes and basically kind of cornering her into doing this live show. But he shows up at Coyote Ugly to confront her about not showing up for the gig, but then he gets into a fight with a patron at the bar because someone is like being a little handsy with her. And when Lil hired her, she said 2 rules: don't date the customers and don't bring your boyfriends into my bar. The boyfriend came into the bar, and maybe Lil wouldn't have known that it was her boyfriend, except for the fact that she's saying, Kevin, stop, no. And he's saying, get your hands off my girlfriend, which is all very convenient that happens in front of Lil. So she's fired. Lil fires Violet, and she was worried about losing the job to go to the gig. Well, now she didn't go to the gig, and she lost Kevin, and she lost the job. So this is her low point.
Yeah, and at the low point, she retreats to her safe place, which is Joyzy, and she goes back to her best friend, her like very Joyzy best friend.
Do you know who that actor is? Her friend?
No, I don't.
Her name's Melanie Linsky. She was on 2.5 Men forever. She was like the neighbor or the someone who was like obsessed with Charlie. She was also on a very good show called Togetherness that was on HBO for a couple of seasons. I liked her in that show.
Yeah, she's fun, and she has a great line where they go back to Jersey for her wedding, and she goes, "Yeah, he'll make a great first husband." And it's kind of funny because she seems to not care about him at all because Violet is all upset because she's at her low point, and she's like, "No, I don't want to be upset at your wedding day." She's like, "That boy's been in my family for 5 minutes. You've been in my family for my whole life." That's a sweet line.
It is a sweet line. Yeah, she says that after Violet's dad is in the hospital. And when you first hear that the dad has been rushed to the hospital, what did you think? Like, why did you think he was going to the hospital?
Oh, the movie's hinting that he has heart problems because it's John Goodman, and John Goodman's had bigger John Goodman years, and he looks better in other times. This is big John Goodman. And Violet is a good daughter, and she tries to substitute the veggie bacon for the bacon, and she brings him lean cuisine instead of his McDonald's because he's a toll booth operator, so he's breathing in exhaust all day. He doesn't exercise, he doesn't move, and you assume he was going to the hospital because he had a heart attack.
Right, but that's not it. It's that he gets hit by a car because, he is a toll booth operator, which, I don't know. I was just kind of surprised by that. I thought it was a weird plot choice. Also, just as a sidebar, toll booth operators as a job, that kind of doesn't stand the test of time. I assume that there are still some, but those jobs have kind of been made extinct or at least endangered because of Easy Pass and things like that.
Oh, yeah. And the dad kind of has a talking with her and says, you know, your mother didn't quit because she was afraid of the stage. She quit because when you were born, she was considering quitting, and I was totally okay with letting her quit, and I always felt bad because she was so wonderful. But it turns out she wasn't afraid of the stage, and she was magical on stage, and you need to go back on stage and be magical too.
Right. It's a sweet moment.
It's very sweet, and it just reminds you how amazing, and I'd almost use the word underrated about John Goodman, because he was on sitcoms for years and maybe people don't appreciate him as much. He is such a good actor. I thought that scene when he was talking about the dead mother was surprisingly moving. Like, I just didn't expect anything in this film to be moving. And I'm like, John Goodman brings his A game even to this, you know, Jerry Bruckheimer film.
Yeah, he definitely elevates it. And he's one of the few actors in this movie that is a bigger name. It's a lot of unknowns. I mean, Maria Bello was in ER fine, and Tyra Banks has a small role, but it's a lot of unknowns in here. And yeah, he does elevate it with his acting.
Yeah, I actually think that's kind of cool when a movie can sell a concept instead of, here's Johnny Depp in this film. And people went to see this film because, you know, for whatever reason, but they didn't go because John Goodman has a small role in it.
True.
And we also didn't mention the big name, which I just brought up. Jerry Bruckheimer is the producer of this film. And Michael Bay actually has a small cameo. He takes a picture of Violet for the Village Voice. And Michael Bay, of course, works with Jerry Bruckheimer on all these big explosion films.
This isn't like a explosion Jerry Bruckheimer film, but it has the trademark sexy girls. So Violet is for sure going to quit and move back to New Jersey to take care of her dad, but she doesn't because of his inspirational speech. She is kind of maybe going to get back together with Kevin. She's like going into her apartment and Kevin is calling, and she like races to get to the phone before he's done leaving the message on the answering machine, which is a thing that used to happen. And she misses him, and then she calls him back and he's not there, and she goes by his apartment and he's letting in this really attractive woman and saying, oh, you're really gonna like my place. And she's like, oh no, he's moved on, he's with someone new. It turns out that he's subletting his apartment, which we know from like the most awkward, stilted dialogue when he's like, so I hope you enjoy moving into my apartment. You said your boyfriend's coming in a day or two, right? And she says, yes, and you are moving to Chicago. Why are you moving to Chicago away from New York City? I don't know. It's just like, it's very like awkward and forced. I did like the fact that she doesn't go back to Lil and like go begging for her job back. We see her, she's working at a diner, and it's actually Lil who goes to Violet and apologizes and says, if you ever want to come back, you're welcome to. And Violet's like, no, I'm good. But now Violet is going to compete in this talent contest. It's an open mic showcase or something.
It's whatever the movie needs. If it's Battle of the Bands, this is your equivalent of, here's the showcase for amateurs. This is the trope in a lot of films.
Right. There's a scene where she's going to this event with her dad and her best friend, and then she gets nervous as she's going through the tolls, and like, you know, her dad is the toll worker. He asks one of his buddies to like light up all the lights, and that seems really weird and confusing and dangerous if you're a driver who's like seeing all of the lights flashing at that point.
That's something they do for special occasions. For John Goodman's character who's been there 30 years. My daughter's about to get discovered in New York City. You know, you get that for him. I liked that. I thought it was cute.
Okay, I'll buy that. It's not cute when she gets nervous and then like does a U-turn across like 10 lanes of traffic. That is like, oh my God. Like I always hate going into and out of those toll lanes. It's always like kind of scary. And then she changes her mind again and decides, yes, she will go into the city. So then she has to do another crazy U-turn. Then she gets to the performance and she chokes again.
She actually says, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And then O'Donnell, who was backstage and still is rooting for her. Well, because to be fair, Lil called him up and said, check out the Village Voice, page 68, better be there. And he figures it out. So he goes and he decides to just shut down the electricity, which is, I assume, a very accessible switch for anyone. But he pulls that red lever. And now that she's in darkness, which we established earlier in the film, to its credit, it did establish that she can sing when she thinks she's alone. So she's able to sing, and then he turns the lights on, and she's singing a song that she just wrote called Can't Fight the Moonlight. And for people watching this in 2020, we know that this was a very popular song that did come out of this movie.
It was very popular?
Yes. I mean, this is a very popular song. Actually, not even this song, but the remix of this song was very popular. But in this film, everyone goes crazy for her song because she sings it very well. And then the real singer, LeAnn Rimes, picks up this song, which she does in real life. She does sing this song. And then it ends with the two of them doing a duet on the bar at Coyote Ugly. And she's back together with O'Donnell. And she's now super successful, so she's bought O'Donnell the comic book back. The dad is healthy. The dad has a new girlfriend. It happens to be the nurse who took care of his broken leg. And everyone is happy, and the movie ends on a little comic relief of somehow they get John Goodman to dance on the bar.
Right. Just interesting fact about LeAnn Rimes. LeAnn Rimes sings...
No, it doesn't.
What?
LeAnn Rimes. No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay. It's like when someone says, nothing rhymes with orange, and you say, no, it doesn't. I get it. So, anyway, the interesting fact about LeAnn Rimes is that she sings all of the songs in the movie. Like, whenever Violet is singing, it's actually dubbed with LeAnn Rimes. So at the end of the movie, when LeAnn Rimes and Violet are duetting in the bar, it's actually LeAnn Rimes kind of duetting with herself. Fun fact, whatever. But yeah, that's the end of the movie. So, James, what do you think? Does Coyote Ugly stand the test of time?
You know, when I was in medical school, sometimes I'd visit my buddy Al, who lived in the East 30s, but sometimes I'd go to the west side of Manhattan in Chelsea, and we used to go to this bar called Red Rock West. I've mentioned it earlier, and this bar was very much like the things in this bar. Like I was saying earlier, there were a lot of men, a lot of women at this bar. No funny business happened with the women. They were enormous bouncers, a lot more bouncers than this film depicts. They only depict like one big guy. No, you did not get anywhere near them. When we decided to watch this film again, my initial thought was, this film is probably pretty sexist or something. I don't think it's sexist really. I mean, pretty much every male characters, they're kind of dummies, and all the women, all the coyotes, especially Lil, are depicted as very smart women. Tyra Banks' character, she was a coyote for a couple of years, and now she's in law school in New York City. Lil runs a successful business, and Piper Perabo, I think she's very well cast in this film, because the coyotes are intimidatingly beautiful women. I mean, Piper Perabo, she's beautiful, this actress, but she comes off as more cute, while these women are more of the hot category. And I looked at her IMDb. She's been, regularly employed for the last 20 years, but I feel like she should have been a bigger actress than she is. But I guess it just didn't happen. But I'll tell you that bar, Red Rock West, it's out of business. I'm pretty sure Coyote Ugly's still around.
There are many locations of Coyote Ugly still around today. I looked it up.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's kind of, maybe even now it's a little more of like, they have to do everything that's in the film. The thing is, I just don't really get a lot of the things that happen in the film. Like, Violet's character goes from a singer-songwriter on this journey of, I'm so nervous, I'll get more nervous, and she never really overcomes this in any meaningful way. I don't really understand what she does. She pays a guy $10. She sings one way or another, not very well. And later in the film, Lil tracks her down somehow. This is before Facebook and everything. Tracks her down and begs for her job back. Why does Lil need to find someone that hard? I mean, it seems like if you're making this much money as a bartender there, she could probably fill that job pretty easily. This film, I had a good time watching it, but the screenplay needs to be tighter. I'm going to say that this film does not stand the test of time just because I kind of rolled my eyes at the characters, not as much at the storyline. And there's a lot of characters, I like them. I think I like all the Coyotes. The guy Adam Garcia, who plays Kevin O'Donnell, he's perfectly fine in the role. And, this is well directed, I think. It looks good. The music is kind of fun for that era. They've got, remixes of EMF's Unbelievable, which is just kind of a funny... yeah, that one. It's not a terrible film. There's a better version of this film that could be made and written. And it's just not this film, but it's okay. It just doesn't stand up. What do you think, Al? Does this film stand the test of time?
Recently, over the past couple of days, we've watched a bunch of movies. We just watched Jojo Rabbit and we just watched Bombshell. And both of those movies are amazing. And then in the middle of those two, I watched this movie. And it's not fair to compare Coyote Ugly with those two movies that were nominated for multiple Oscars, but Coyote Ugly is just forgettable. And, when we talk about a movie because it has its anniversary, sometimes I think maybe other people will be talking about a movie because it's this anniversary. And, I saw a couple things about Clueless turning 25. I don't know if it was a huge trending topic because there's bigger things going on in the world right now. But I have a funny feeling no one else is going to be talking about Coyote Ugly's 20th anniversary. I don't know that anyone really cares. I don't know that anyone's really thinking about this movie anymore. It hasn't really entered the pop culture lexicon. I didn't realize that Can't Fight the Moonlight was a hit. It's not that great. I haven't been singing it like I was singing That Thing You Do for a week after I saw that movie.
To be fair, as I said, it's the remix that is the popular version. If you heard the remix, you might remember that one more.
Whatever. The song to me is forgettable, which is kind of like the movie. And yeah, the fact that Piper Perabo didn't become the next big thing is a shame. I think she's good in this movie. A lot of these people didn't really go on to great careers. Tyra Banks is obviously huge and she's got America's Next Top Model and, her talk show and everything. So she's got a phenomenal career. Isabella Miko, who plays Cammy, the blonde who has the boyfriend Al, I think she is stunning in this movie and she didn't really do much after it. The fact that this movie didn't really make an impact in pop culture sort of says that it doesn't stand the test of time. Also, just in terms of this movie's plot, Violet can write songs and she can sing them at home alone, but she just can't sing them in public. That doesn't stand the test of time because nowadays she could just record her demo, her songs, and put them up on SoundCloud or Spotify or YouTube and get discovered that way. Yes, it's a long shot now, but so is being discovered in, an open mic night at some bar in the city.
That's a very good point because her also singing songwriting didn't really make sense because throughout the film, she's listening to the guy listening to hip hop across the street and she suddenly goes, now I have a new beat. She just winds up turning out like a regular pop song. There's no evolution or progression.
Yeah, there's a little bit of moment of I will culturally appropriate that, but she kind of doesn't, or she just hits a button on her keyboard of hip hop beat or something. I don't know. Overall, I'm going to say that this movie doesn't stand the test of time. It's harmless. It's a harmless, silly movie. It's fine, but it's not really memorable in any way, shape, or form. Neither here nor there about it standing the test of time, but I did just want to mention that it seemed really obvious to me that when the girls are dancing on the bar, you never see like a full body shot. I don't know if you noticed that, but you see like close-ups on the feet and then close-ups on their faces. Like it's very clearly doubles.
Oh, no, I didn't notice that. Huh.
Especially in the Devil Went Down to Georgia scene when they're dancing to that. It's like a complicated Southern dance, and you see the feet moving, and then you see their faces. It's not them. But next week, we're going to talk about Caddyshack, the beloved golf movie with Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, and, of course, a gopher.
And directed by the late Hal Ramis.
Yes, his first movie that he directed, his directorial debut. Of course, we want to hear your thoughts about Coyote Ugly and girls dancing on bars and how people can have 5 jobs in New York City but still be broke but also have a car.
And buy $1,000 comic books.
Right, exactly. So tweet us your thoughts on that at Test of Time Pod. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. You can email us at thetestoftimepodcast@gmail.com if you just have a lot to say. And don't forget to leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars, if you please. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.